I know there's a bunch of you listening that have written into Decision Day asking for someone to represent the various opportunities in psychological studies. Our guest today is the perfect place to start. Erin Smith is a sports psychologist and executive coach currently specializing in accelerating the careers of high-performing female executives as they navigate male-dominated industries. Before starting her private coaching practice, Driven Beyond Excellence, she spent 6.5 years in the research department of Bridgewater Associates, which is the largest hedge fund in the world, using her master's degree in sports psychology. Being mindful and observant throughout her various psychology-related career paths has helped Erin to recognize the importance of exploration that allows us to make a graduation decision with confidence. A fun and vibrant person to talk to, let's learn about the paths that an expertise in psychology can offer with knowledge from Erin Smith. I'm Leah Leverich, a class of 2022 high school graduate exploring every path to success after senior year. Let's expand your mind to what's out there and narrow down your options so you can make a graduation decision with confidence.
The Decision Day podcast is brought to you by the Rise and Record event in Nashville, Tennessee. Rise up and share your story through video. Visit riseandrecord.com for more.
Hello, Erin. How are you doing today?
Hi, Leah. I'm doing great. Super excited to be here.
Can you set the picture for us? What kind of student were you like in high school?
I was a coaster. That's what I would call myself. I kind of coasted through. I didn't do horribly. I think I got A's and B's until senior year when I decided that I wanted to know what it would be like if I actually applied myself. Like, what would happen if I just gave it my all? Like, how would that go? And I got all A's senior year. So yeah, before that, I was kind of like, all right, this is cool. I'll learn some stuff. I'll hang out. I'll, make friends. I was very shy as well. But, in general, I would say I liked learning and I liked school in high school, but high school's hard. So I was also like, oh, I can't wait to be done,
I feel that. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate. So did you specifically have a decision day?
I didn't. No. And I had never heard of that until you brought that up. And I thought, wow, what a concept. I wonder what that would have been like if I had a decision day where, everyone had to show up. Although I do feel like there was, even though it was unofficial, I felt like I had to make a decision because everyone around me was making a decision. And so in that way there was, but not a specific day like what you had described experiencing at your high school.
Yeah. So more on that point, what does decision day mean to you, or what did it mean to you?
I think it meant that I had to decide my future in that moment, right? Like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I'm like, I'm 17, 18 years old. How the heck am I expected to decide what I'm going to do for the rest of my life right now? That seemed crazy to me.
What did you end up deciding? What did you do right after graduating?
Yeah. So I decided, in my trying to figure this out, I of course asked people, older people, like, how do you make this decision? Yeah. And some of the best advice that I got was, figure out what you are good at or what you like doing, like regardless of subject in school, regardless of, anything like that. Like, what do you just enjoy doing? And so I kind of put those things together. I knew I enjoyed giving advice. And I also loved the one psychology class that I took in high school. I was like, subject wise, that's my subject. I really enjoyed psychology. I loved learning about human behavior, how the mind works, personality, all that kind of stuff. The more I learned, the more I wanted to keep learning. So that was kind of the way that I decided. I decided psychology is where I'm going to go. And so I'll major in that when I go to college.
Okay. Where did you end up going for undergrad? And then what did you end up majoring in?
I went to UConn, University of Connecticut, and I majored in psychology, and I minored in neuroscience. I think that's important too, because I wanted to specialize in a more science directed arm of psychology.
A few years later, right? You went to grad school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was, I graduated in 2004 from undergrad. And then it wasn't until 2010 really that I went to grad school. I went to Boston University to get my master's degree in sports psychology, which again, I did that. I left college, kind of like you leaving high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I was, my parents had told me, if you go right to grad school, we'll pay for it for you. And I was like, wow, that's such a great offer, but I don't know what I want to do. So I don't want to waste your money, and I don't want to waste my time and I was done with school by that point. Like at the end of college, I was like, that's it. I need real world experience now. So I went out and tried a bunch of different jobs and experiences until I discovered sports psychology. And that was when I was inspired to go back and get a higher degree specializing in that.
Okay, so for the listener that's intrigued but doesn't know, what
Yeah.
is sports psychology? What did you study and what are you now almost an expert in?
Sports psychology is, first of all, it's rooted in positive psychology. So it's all about taking you from good to great. Like, what do you do that's good? Let's focus on your strengths and your passions and your interests, and let's align those with what you want to do so that we can create and help you hone your peak performance, your maximum, reach
Mm.
your maximum potential. So it's a lot of mindset. And sports psychology sounds so narrow. I think it should really be called performance psychology, because
Ooh.
athletes are performing. We're training them to get ready to perform in their sport, on the field, on the court. Like, how do you achieve that state of flow so that you can like take all of your strengths and everything that you are good at and aim it at achieving a specific goal?
What type of student would excel learning and getting that degree?
Good question. I think someone who is, first of all, passionate about helping people improve. And maybe they want to
Mm.
help, they're passionate about their own development as well, because that's something that I was definitely always passionate about. I loved growing. I loved learning how to improve myself. Yeah, I would say someone who's interested in, what's underneath it all. Why are we doing the things we do? If you have a curiosity for that, that's probably something that you'd be drawn to.
Wow, that's such like
Yeah.
a niche topic that I would have never even thought of. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
How have you used your knowledge from that specific psychology major in your current business and personal life?
Well, right now I'm an executive coach. And I like to say I'm a sports psychologist masquerading as an executive coach, because when I tell people I'm a sports psychologist, they're like, oh, I know some athletes that you can work with. And I'm like, that's really great. But I actually work with executives. So if you are in a leadership role, or you want to be in a leadership role, you can use the same techniques that elite athletes use to prepare to achieve their goals.
Yeah.
There's a lot of leadership principles tied into that. So yeah, that's exactly how I tie it in. So I went to grad school for sports psychology. And right before that, though, I had a job working in private equity. For people who don't know what that is, it's a form of investing, buying businesses and making them better and then selling them. So private equity firms, really intense environment to be in. And so when I then went to get my degree in sports psychology, I realized that's just like being an athlete in an intense environment. This
Yeah.
is also an intense environment where the same principles, if applied correctly, could help you excel and get better at what you do. So yeah, I decided to go work for a hedge fund after I graduated with my degree, just to immerse myself even further in the environment, so I could understand, okay, where and how and who can I apply these sports psychology techniques to. So I kind of like got some experience doing that before I decided to full time do coaching for helping people to develop their leadership skills using sports psychology techniques.
Wow. Okay, so with all of that being said, was the degree and master's degree, was all of that worth it for you and the career that you're in?
Yes, for sure. That's because I waited. Like I didn't dive right in. Like, I left college thinking I want to go to grad school. I want a higher education, except for I don't know what for. So I
Mm.
didn't want to I knew I needed experience first. So I'm glad that I took that time, that gap, even though I was very tempted to not, because, I got the pressure.
Yeah.
I got the pressure and a good deal, right? They're like, we'll pay for it. I'm like, you know what? I'd rather figure out how to pay for it myself down the line when I know what I'm doing with
Making
it,
the
like with the
right
purpose.
decision, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, with
Exactly.
that time that you took in between, what specifically did you do to find that specific thing that you wanted to study further?
Well, I tried different types of psychology careers. So if, one graduates with a psychology degree, there's so many different things that you can do.
Yeah.
And the first thing I tried was I thought I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. I thought I wanted to be a therapist. So I did. I tried being or working at a psychiatric hospital with a rehab and outpatient program. So I worked with women who were in detox from substance abuse. And then in like the 28-day program, I was the counselor. which was really, really interesting, very enlightening. But at the end of the day, I just discovered by experience, which I could only do by experience, that it wasn't for me. But I couldn't have known that. Like in college, when I was studying clinical psychology, that was the most interesting thing for me to study. But actually practicing it, no, it didn't work out. So it was super valuable for me to have that experience, to go out and like try it out in the real world. And then so after that, when I decided, okay, clinical psych's not for me, let me try a different type of psychology. So I tried human resources, because that's industrial organizational psychology, social psychology. And it's something I had also studied in undergrad, but didn't think that I was interested in it. So again, the experience kind of proved me wrong, right? Like studying it in a book, it sounded a little boring, but in practice, in reality, it was actually kind of fun. And I enjoyed the interaction. I enjoyed the environment of being in a corporate space. And that was my second job out of school. So it was also, made me feel like an adult too. I felt very like mature and responsible, and it gave me, a different perspective on the world. But yeah, after doing that for a few years, I also realized this is not the direction I wanted to go, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do until I got laid off in 2008, because I was working at the private equity firm. There was the financial crisis and the crash that happened in 2008. So I got laid off. So that was my chance to really take a step back and examine what I was doing and make a decision about where I want to go next. And that was when I discovered sports psychology, just by happenstance too, by the way. That was just like a lucky timing, because my brother decided he wanted to be a sports agent, like Jerry Maguire type agent. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Well, I'm into psychology and you're into sports. Let's see if we could do something together. And so I Googled sports and psychology just to see what Google would say. And lo and behold, there's this entire industry.
This was almost like the universe being like, you did all that work. Okay, fine. We'll just give you your answer.
Here it is. There it is, right? Serve it right up. But it wouldn't have happened that way had I not, been exploring and trying to figure it out, and knowing that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I wanted to have my own business ultimately, but I knew I needed experience first. That was just me. I wanted to go work for other people to see like what the world could offer. Before I went and decided, what am I going to go now do with all of this knowledge?
With all of that trial and error and experience that you got, how can a high schooler apply that to their current life before they graduate?
Yeah, there's a few things I would say. I would say, one, take some time to think about who you are. And even though like we're always growing and evolving and changing, so who you are now is not going to be who you are in the future. And it wasn't who you were a couple of years ago. But just take inventory of, what do you like doing? And it could be anything, literally anything. Like, don't get stuck on what subject or what class or what activity. Like I had a conversation with someone once who told me that he was counseling someone who had this exact question. And he was like, what do you like doing? And the guy was like, I like sleeping. And he's like, okay, great. Like, he thought he was kidding. He thought he was like, I just like to sleep. Like, that's nothing. Long story short, fast forward a few years, he is a sleep scientist now. He studies sleep and helps people. You know what I mean? Like,
how can I get in on that?
Exactly, right? So, and that was like, it all started out by him just admitting, like, I like to sleep. And like, that's not a school subject. That's not something you get homework for. You didn't have to try to do it. You just, that's what it is. So really just be honest with, what do you enjoy doing? What do you like doing? And go from there.
That's amazing. So you worked at Bridgewater Associates, which is the largest hedge fund in the world. What was an average workday like for you?
Long.
Okay.
Yeah, long, busy. I worked with one of the most integral teams in the entire company in the research department, and they had some really intense responsibilities. And so my job was to help them make sure that they could like achieve those responsibilities, whether by, helping them get to where they need to go, or by clearing the way for them. So that might be, that could range from anything from like scheduling to putting out fires, metaphorical fires, or just making sure they have what they need so that they can get the job done, and sort of coordinating a lot of different pieces and managing the team as a whole, and making sure they feel connected and they feel focused.
And you secured that through your degree in psychology, right?
I think so. I think I started out, well, actually, it was my degree in psychology and my experience in human resources. So that kind of
Okay.
played a part. My exploratory jobs ended up helping me land a role in the recruiting department at Bridgewater to start. So I started there because my background was interesting. They liked that I had a sports psychology degree. They just thought that was cool. And I had experience with recruiting. So they hired me. And then from there, I ended up finding the job in the research department where I ultimately wanted to be, because that was closest you could get to the core of that company. And I was really interested in
Wow.
learning, like I said, about what is it like inside a hedge fund? What are the high performers? I wanted to work with the really, really high performing people, because that's what elite athletes are. They're high performers.
Yeah. So, are there hardships you had to overcome working in a male dominated industry? I know this is a lot of what you're focusing on now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, hardships, I would say, I don't know that I would call it a hardship. I would just call it a challenge. It's just something different, because you're in an environment that is highly concentrated by men. There's lots of women there, of course,
Hmm.
but it's, it's a more masculine environment. So it's very, goal oriented and just very intense and achievement oriented and hardworking, long hours. So there was a lot of adapting to that, but also learning how to this culture at Bridgewater is very specific as well. So having to learn how to operate within those parameters was an interesting challenge, because I didn't want to change who I was. I didn't want to become the
Yeah.
culture, if that makes sense. I wanted to be me and still operate successfully within this culture. So I would say that was probably my biggest challenge, was figuring out how to stay true to myself while being surrounded by some really, really intense and strong opinions and voices.
Any tips on how you did or how you were able to still stay true to yourself and succeed?
A lot of observation and
Okay.
reflection. Stepping back. So a lot of people, what they want to do is dive in and just do. They want to figure it out by doing. I would like to step back and observe first. And that includes observing outside of myself and inside of myself. How am I responding to this environment? How is this environment responding to me? Who in this environment is doing really well and why? And can I do what they're doing? Do I want to do what they're doing?
Oh.
Do I want to act like that? Do I want to sound like that? Do I believe what they believe? So it's a lot of like stepping back, observing, and then like reflecting on, does that jive with me or not? Kind of sitting in it and going, do I like it? Do I not like it? Okay. And then finding the path of least resistance, the part which includes, what I like doing, what I enjoy doing, what I believe in, and aligning with that, which is hard to do when there's a whole bunch of different voices and beliefs and paths that you can take. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that was my methodology that worked the best, because then I was able to be myself and I was happy with who I was at the end of the day.
I think I saw this on your social media. Would you say that you hit a ceiling? Is that where that transition came?
Yeah, I hit a ceiling for me, because there were places I could go, but I'm not a finance person. I wasn't the investment associate person,
Hmm.
which is what the core of the business is. Like either you're trading, you're investing, you're researching, or you're a client facing person. I was none of those things. And I always knew that I wanted to do coaching full time after I got my sports psychology degree.
Oh.
So, yeah, so I hit the point that I consider a ceiling, where I couldn't go any further without being completely unhappy, like forcing myself into a role that like could have been cool and, a higher title or a promotion or whatever, more responsibility, but not what I actually wanted to be doing. So it was my self-imposed ceiling that I hit.
Okay. And how did you make that transition into what you're doing now, where you're your own boss and you're more entrepreneurial minded? And for a high schooler that's maybe like scared to transition careers, is it okay to change your career?
Mhm.
Like you're still killing it with both when you were doing both.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say the number one thing that I had to get over was going from being really good at something to starting at the bottom again and being not good at
Oh.
something. Yeah, because I had mastered my role at Bridgewater. I was very happy with what I was doing. I was very good at it. And then I had to start something totally new. So even though I knew I was going to be good at coaching, because I had always done it in some fashion, I had no idea how to start a business or run a business or find clients, or, I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to start from scratch with that mindset of like, I'm brand new and I have to learn. So I'm going to suck at it. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to, it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I just went from all the way up here and started down here, but it was exciting. It was something I'd always wanted to do. So even though it was scary as heck, I sort of just decided now's the time. I need to take that leap, and it's now or never. I also got a little push I had blessings from the people that I worked with at Bridgewater. They were like, you're ready. You should go do this. This is what you've always wanted to do. This is your passion. This is your destiny, basically. They're like, go for it. You got to do it.
Oh, that's so great.
I know, it was nice.
So to take this direct quote from your Instagram, you said the Driven Women Project aims to balance the gender gap at the leadership level. So what does that mean for young students entering adult life after graduation?
Yeah, because there's a gender gap at the leadership level, especially male-dominated environment or industry or career. It almost starts out 50-50, half men, half women. And then as you go up the ladder, women start to drop off, like the numbers of women start to drop off. So I would say for people who are interested in closing that gender gap, stay focused on yourself, stay focused on what you want to do, and make sure that you are fulfilling your highest and best use, right? That's aligning your interests with what is out there in the world, and not caving in to the challenges and those other voices around you saying, do it like this or don't do it like that, or like it's a male dominated space, you have to conform. Don't conform. Don't let anything stop you, because it's really hard at the top. It's going to be hard. No matter what you do, it's not going to be easier. This is what it is. So just keep going and just keep checking in with yourself. Like, what makes you happy? What makes you feel fulfilled in what you do for work?
So if you were to do it all over again, but now you're a class of 2024 high school graduate, with how education has been changing, would you have taken the same path, or would you have done anything differently?
I can't imagine having done anything differently. I think maybe I would have been interested, knowing myself. I wonder if it was more acceptable back when I graduated to take time off before going to college or deciding not to go to college.
Yeah.
I wonder if I might not have done it. I don't know. My parents might have made me go to college though. I feel like that might have been what would have happened. But I don't know. I don't know if I would have done it differently, because I like the path that I took. It led me to where I am now. You can't go back. So you have to accept that you made the best decision that you could with the information that you had at the time. So I would say, whatever decision you make, own it. Just say, I'm making this decision consciously. I'm aware of it and I feel good about it. So you have done that, right? You have made your decision. You had your decision day, and as uncomfortable as it was, because it felt like you were going against the grain, so to speak, you made that decision. So you should feel confident in that you did the right thing for yourself right now. So even if in the future you're like, oh, I wish I could have done it differently, don't even waste your time doing that. You did what you knew was right for you in that moment. So as long as you own your decision and you're making it consciously and you're thinking it through, that's the best that you can do. And that's what you should do.
I wish I had you in my ear telling me that my senior year, like over and over on a loop until it sunk in.
Yeah,
wow.
You're fine.
All right. I ask every guest the same last question on decision day. So I'm interested to see what you're going to say, Erin. What mistakes do you see young people making?
I think being too judgmental.
Ooh, that's a new one.
Yeah. Being too I'll say it a different way, not being curious enough. Thinking,
even
because
better.
there's a lot of pressure out there to know the answer, which is what we're talking about, right? Like, you had a decision day, like you have to know, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Like, what? There's a lot of politics going on right now, a lot of conversation that you should be looking at critically and thinking about critically. but I would say don't make the mistake of making a judgment about it. Step back, be curious, ask questions, think about it. You don't have to come to a conclusion, especially because there's so much more that you don't know, right? Know what you don't know and recognize that there are things you don't know what you don't know. There are things that you won't know that you're missing. So if you jump to a conclusion or you form a judgment, you're just shrinking your opportunities because you're missing, like, you don't know what you're missing out there. So I say, expand, don't shrink, step back, explore, ask questions, remain curious, avoid making judgments and drawing conclusions about things, especially the world, right? Everyone's like, we don't know what's going to happen. This world is crazy. It's always been crazy. This world's always been crazy. No one's going to know what's going to happen next. So there's nothing special about this time period other than it's crazy. And there's always uncertainty. So just remain curious, remain open, and explore.
Such a unique response. I loved that. Thank you so much, Erin. Everyone needs to follow you, connect with you. How can we support you, and where can we follow you?
Yeah, the Driven Women Project podcast. You could find that anywhere that you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, whatever. You can Google the Driven Women Project and it will come up, because I don't think there's anything else called that. But yeah, the Driven Women Project podcast. Go give it a listen and see, where you go from there.
That's amazing. You need to be reaching out to her. You can share this episode, because I know that your friends in high school need to hear this information too. Share it with a classmate. Rate the podcast 5 stars. You can join the Decision Day community on social media at Decision Day Podcast or at Leah Leverich. Please share what you're unsure about, or what major you're thinking of entering, what career, what industry you want to learn more about. We would love to help you make your decision with confidence. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your wisdom. I can't wait to share a new perspective with you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Decision Day podcast. If you know a student in high school, ask them to listen or share an episode with them. And as always, we love hearing from you. Share your stories with us on social, Decision Day Podcast. Until next week. Decision Day Podcast is sponsored by the Rise and Record event, Nashville, Tennessee. RiseandRecord.com for more info.